it is significant when you look at the waterfall conversion rates across the entire funnel of what impact that will have in terms of revenue.
Yeah. Welcome back. Wing It Podcast, goosedigital.com. Who do we have?
Chris O'Neill.
Kevin Butler.
Chris Masino.
Welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
So happy to be here.
All right.
Chris Masino, Chief Revenue Officer, Acton Software. Very excited to have you on the podcast. And those of you who don't know, we had an excellent event last night with Acton as our partner and a number of customers downtown, and it's a great turnout.
It was awesome. Great energy in the room. Always great to be out at a brewery after work, especially.
Yeah.
Drinking your Goose Island IPA, by the way, which was fantastic.
That was a strategic venue choice. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it was. Well, thanks again. We talked about last night the challenges that marketers are going through, and we wanted to sort of replay that exact same talk track and give the audience here an opportunity to hear about how Acton is addressing the challenges of today's marketer, and really going into sort of that next 10-year, would you say like that next 10-year marketing automation wave, recognizing that first 10 is kind of nicely baked and people now sort of largely see this as something that they need, so I guess we'll open up really with a couple of the big challenges that we're seeing in the space. Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Chris, as our guest.
Yes.
What are some of the big challenges that marketers are facing today?
Yeah, well, I think marketing automation has been around for a while. It's not new, but when you're out talking to customers and prospects every day, you find that for the most part, people are still very early on their journey on the digital marketing front. They are still trying to figure out the basics. So I think there's a lot of buzz about how digital has transformed organizations. But for a lot of folks, they're still taking baby steps, right? And for a lot of marketers, it's the simple things like, how do I justify my existence? If I have 10,000, 100,000, or $1 million to spend this quarter, where do I spend it? Where do I get the best bang for my buck right now?
Yes.
How do I justify getting incremental dollars, to go invest in new programs, new campaigns? How do I know which channel performs the best? And then they have a CEO or a head of sales like me breathing down their neck looking for revenue, right? And now, since the buyer journey has really transformed and happening more online than ever before, whether it be 70% or 90%, is happening without ever talking to a salesperson, marketers are empowered now more than ever to drive revenue for the organization.
Right.
So when done right, marketing automation should help the marketer drive revenue, right? It's a revenue generating engine for the organization. And for a lot of marketers, like, it starts with having a basic plan and strategy of what exactly they want to go do. They got to take a look at their customer life cycle and figure out, where do we want to focus our energy, whether it be customer acquisition, customer growth, loyalty. What are the use cases that they want to drive to have the biggest impact? And they need to have a strategy and plan to execute. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to demonstrate the ROI.
Yeah, and one of the things, and maybe I'll turn this over to Chris and then Kevin, that we've seen in terms of the challenges is that marketing automation has typically been viewed as entirely front end of the funnel. And one of the things that we like about how Acton positions itself is really in that life cycle and going beyond just lead generation. So, but we all know that marketers are responsible for driving revenue, but that's not always, top of funnel. I know Chris, being on the front lines, working with these tools every day, how would you sort of classify the marketing challenges that you in your opportunities that you're in every day?
Yeah, and I think Chris was talking about that quite a bit last night as well. How there's been always like a lot of focus on lead gen when you talk to a prospective customer who maybe is not using any of the newer tools. They're basically looking at it in terms of, okay, so what is that? How is that going to sort of generate? How am I going to get more revenue and more profitable customers out of this? and immediately they start talking about, new engagements. What are my sales reps actually doing? Like, how can we get them, working harder, working more? And reality is that there's a whole lot, generally a gold mine sitting in your existing customer base. If you're an existing, business, there's a lot that can be done with your existing, drive more revenue and more loyalty out of your existing customer base.
Yeah. I mean, customers don't want to be sold to, right? They want to come to their own conclusions, usually through research, talking to peers, and educating themselves about the awareness of the problems and challenges they have,
Yes.
considering the various solutions that are out there and available to them before they entertain into a conversation with a sales rep. Sales reps need to be more informed, more relevant, and tailor and personalize that conversation more than ever before to be credible and relevant and develop that trusted advisor status. Marketers play an amazing role to help the salesperson be that much more effective in their jobs if done right. And I think, in working with you guys as a partner who have a lot of domain expertise and experience of how to build the right strategy and implementation plan to get the full value from these platforms is incredibly important. Otherwise, left to their own devices, marketers don't have the blueprint. They don't have the
That's
playbook
right.
to go figure it out on their own.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We talked about this last night, Mike, when you were speaking. Is this idea of marketing is supporting sales and sales is supporting marketing. I think like gone are the days of it's like you're that department and I'm this department and there's a big wall between us. Like the new reality is you have to be working in an aligned function in order to make any traction with sophisticated buyers. Otherwise, to your point, they're just being sold to. It's just noise. It's not engaging.
Yeah.
And so it's our view, and I think you agree, and feel free not to, is this idea that marketing and sales are interchanging roles in each stage of that engagement process and that end-to-end journey, based on what's right for that prospect, that customer at that stage. But
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter if you're like a lead role or a supporting role. You should be just in alignment as to what's the right thing to do, and never actually just backing out of it.
Yeah. You never want to bring, the sales team, which is, oftentimes the case, into an opportunity too early when it's really not yet an opportunity, when a customer is just entering into the awareness stage of the buying
Right.
cycle and jump right into a buying
A
process,
close, yeah.
right? They're not ready for that, right?
No.
So the right personalized content and conversation that's relevant to that buyer at that time in that channel where they prefer to operate and communicate is ideal. So being able to have that proper balance between sales and marketing is critically important. And we find that, again, most organizations are still crawling and walking and not yet sprinting, and which I think is perfectly fine because it's a phased iterative approach to deliver value over time, to be able to show how you can move from basic email marketing, right, which is where most of the market is just, I would say in some cases batch and blast, hopefully a little bit more sophisticated than that, but they're still primarily operating in an email channel, and then start moving to a multi-channel campaign approach, which gives them the benefit of insights
Right.
across all the channels to have a much more personalized and tailored conversation so they can deliver the right content or message at the right time to the right audience that's going to have the highest degree of conversion
And that
engagement.
that dovetails into what we're going to talk about next, just in terms of having a strategy. One of the things you talked about at the beginning was just like, how do you actually bring this to a strategy or that blueprint? And I do think, in other industries, whether it's IT or project management, you can go and become a certified project management professional or agile development. And there's a lot of blueprints and frameworks to sort of support those individuals that move into those roles, and a lot of community support. Whereas in marketing, it's we don't really have that per se. Certainly in some of the next generation marketing technologies, that really doesn't exist. So that it's down to the marketer now who's in that seat to have those tough conversations and with sales and together on how do you put this into your business. So why don't we talk a little bit about developing a plan? How do you take this and say, we're going to go wide as possible so that we get the most value, and then start to go deep over time and truly, to your point, be able to measure what worked, and if it didn't work, that's probably okay too.
Yeah. I think you have to take action as number one, right? I mean, Acton as a company believes on taking action, right? That this is where I think a lot of marketers struggle is where to begin. And they can take baby steps. They don't need to boil the ocean and have it all thought through. I think one of the things we really love about the partnership with Goose is that you guys have put together a fairly prescriptive implementation and blueprint around use cases that are already designed and proven in the market, right? So not go out and reinvent the wheel and start from scratch, but come up with a game plan, a strategy that you can implement right away and start to demonstrate value across the customer lifecycle. Looking at various use cases, or as you guys call them, accelerators, that accelerate the value and the time to value of that solution to demonstrate the ROI. So before you go ask for a lot of money to go support your marketing programs, like demonstrate where you're getting ROI out of the current programs and spend that you currently have, and be able to demonstrate how that's going to result into a much bigger opportunity over time.
Kev?
Well, and also, like, what are you learning as you start to do this, right? Because, your theories and sort of ideas of what you think may work and may not could be very right, could be very wrong, or something in between. And I think it's all about tweaking and optimizing as you go. And that's a really big part of this program that we're trying to roll out for our clients, is this idea of like, we don't really know 100% if this is going to work, but we're sure going to learn and optimize as we need to as we go.
Yeah, and I think what we find as well is that there's been a certain amount of guessing that's been going on, and some purchases, some tech purchases, for example, into sort of that marketing realm that are made like with almost like a, kind of prey, kind of like, try it and see how it works out, and devoid of an overall strategy to help to understand like how can we look back on this experiment and sort of learn from it is, eventually we get involved, and so we talk about how important it is to put in that framework of rinse and repeat, and being able to
And I think adapt. And I think what you're saying, and this is what I think kind of moves us into learning more about where Acton is going, is I think, the word adaptive, and being adaptable is actually a really great word, because I think, marketing technology, is a challenge. I mean, there is a lot of marketing technology out there.
And only like growing in that category.
The networks, the sort of the channels, a lot of that's changing. So how can you build a stance where you can be adaptable? We position marketing automation right at the bottom, as we've all seen in our slides, and we presented last night, where right above your CRM across everything that you're doing. And the purpose of that is so that you can be adaptable. Maybe a program doesn't work and you need to flip. But I think Acton also is driving this message of really truly creating adaptable marketing. So maybe talk about the future of Acton.
Sure.
Chris.
Yeah. You think about the engagement of any individual or company on a buying process. There are a lot of digital footprints that they leave across all the different channels, in social, on your website, and email, right? So you have visibility and data and insights of every interaction of your prospects at any given point in time. So you have a lot of data at your disposal. So how do you leverage machine learning and AI to be far more predictive about, as you guys like to say here in Canada, where the puck is going?
Right.
And so how do you know in advance where people are likely to engage? So you can be far more predictive. One example of that is around what we call adaptive sending. So, getting an email delivered into the primary inbox is increasingly more difficult than ever before with the email police and everything else that organizations are facing us. You may have 98% deliverability, but maybe only 50% of your emails are actually showing up in the inbox and being read. But how do you know when the right time to send that email is? When is the most opportune time that someone's going to engage with your content? People have different behaviors. Maybe they're a morning person, have a cup of coffee and look at their emails. Maybe it's over lunch. Maybe it's over the weekends. It's Sunday watching their kids, hockey or soccer games. So how do you know what the right time is? You have all these digital footprints of when they're engaging with content. So why not put that to use and leverage that to send the right communication at the right time, also at the right channel? And what we've seen as a result is that the open rates have increased by like 16% when using what's called adaptive sending, and the click-through rates increased over 20%. Wow. So those don't sound like massive numbers, but you look in the scheme of it across an entire year-long campaign with all the volume of communications that you're sending out as an organization, it is significant when you look at the waterfall conversion rates across the entire funnel of what impact that will have in terms of revenue.
Yeah.
So it's significant. It's just one of many things that we're working on, embarking on as a company, as we've invested significantly. We've hired over 100 people this past year in product and engineering capacities to really help us take advantage of this opportunity and capitalize on this level of innovation.
I love that. I mean, when Acton first released sort of the unveiling of adaptive journeys and really where it's going and what it means, like everyone at Goose will tell you, I think I even wrote a blog about this too, it's one of the first times I've seen a tech company talk about machine learning and AI in digestible ways, because a lot of the time it's so far out where it's like, oh my God, like I can't even envision a day where we as marketers aren't using these tools every day and telling them what to do. But this is like, yes, you're actually understanding behaviors and patterns on a one-to-one basis to identify when Bob is going to open an email versus Susie and down the road, right? So that's really exciting to me. And I think 16% or 20% on clicks and actions is phenomenal. Like every marketer in any room right now is saying, how can I do that?
Well, and I think when you look at the sales enablement, I mean, Chris, from your, like these things extend to sales alignment, right? Like now you have predictable ways to approach your client, whether it might be, we know that phone calling is still very important as part of that overall process, but
at the right time.
At the right time.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's all goes towards being far more prescriptive. I think, marketing automation does not have to be that hard, right? I think being far more prescriptive about the strategy and having the blueprint already defined and designed and ready to go, and then be more prescriptive about the technology in terms of automating, preemptively and proactively the outcomes is extremely important. And so taking some of that guesswork and manual effort out of the struggle that marketers have, especially in the world of limited and shrinking budgets and resources, that most of the marketing organizations that we work with, they don't have teams of people to go figure this stuff out and jump in a lab and put together, all this analysis and build algorithms to try to figure out how to go and at the end of the day drive revenue for the company. So we try to figure out the best path for them to do that using automation and technology, and AI and machine learning are a big part of that in our roadmap. And then working with strategic partners like Goose, who can come up with the strategy and game plan and the blueprint to say, hey, we've already done your homework for you. Let's go make it happen.
Well, I know that when we look at the roadmap for Acton, it's extremely exciting. I mean, last night you presented the third tier, that adaptive marketing pros, and I think what you want is your platform provider to be one step ahead of your users in the market, and we've seen that in how Acton's perceived and the vision that you have, and that blueprint really it can feel a bit daunting, when you think about getting to an adaptive pro when everybody's kind of at somewhere between stage 1 and 2. But with those blueprints and with the support that Acton and their partner network is doing to be able to get customers there and help them develop this capability is bang on to what the market needs. I mean, we presented stats last night that the e-consultancy report that 98% of marketers agreed that marketing automation was really critical to their success, but only 20% feel like they're getting what they need out of their platform yet. So I think this is a very exciting time, and going into that next 10 years. Chris, I'll turn it over to you for any closing comments, because I think this has been wonderful, and I know you've got a flight to get to soon. But
no, it's been great being up here in Toronto, working with you guys. Really super excited about the partnership. I'm a marketing and sales nerd, so I love talking about some of the strategies and tactics and challenges that organizations are having, and figuring challenges out and helping our customers be successful. And super great to be with partners like Goose.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Great to be here. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Great. Well, if you like today, please like and subscribe and favorite the podcast. Throw us a review if you're on any of the platforms that support that. And head over to goosedigital.com/blog to see our podcast and learn more. Thanks.